Welcome to this talk on Bay 30 of the Canterbury Cathedral Cloister, which I have called the Bay of Reconciliation. Let us begin by orientating ourselves. So Bay 30 is on the east walk, that's the chapter house side, as you see here, and it was by my estimation constructed between September and October 1413. The hidden story of this bay is one of tremendous power and sadness. To interpret it, we must begin with the 5 central shields which relate to Thomas Mowbray, Duke of Norfolk, and his tragic relationship with King Richard II. The young king had a tendency to form intense friendships, and Mowbray was his first such attachment. He gifted his friend a variety of heraldic devices, including a version of the royal crest normally borne by the Prince of Wales. The central boss of Bay 30, which we see here, carries the Mowbray arms, gules, a lion rampant argent, and around it are the chained ostrich feathers which Richard II also gifted him. Mowbray's marriage in 1384 to Elizabeth Fitzalan, the daughter of the Earl of Arundel and niece of Archbishop Arundel, was to have unforeseen consequences in 1387 when Thomas joined his father-in-law in opposition to the king. This placed Mowbray in a very difficult position 10 years later in 1397, when Richard II moved to destroy the Earl of Arundel along with his other allies, including the Earl of Warwick. Mowbray was compelled to become one of the Earl of Arundel's accusers in order to save his own skin. Bay 30 actually commemorates 5 of the 8 men who accused the Earl of Arundel and his brother Archbishop Arundel of treason in September 1397 in acquiescence to the king's wishes. 4 had since died as a consequence of their actions in 1397, while the 5th subsequently abandoned his erstwhile allies and went on to become the Duke of York. A 6th, William Scroop, Earl of Wiltshire, who was executed in 1399, has spilled over into the adjacent Bay 29. In 1398, Richard II moved against Mowbray, now Duke of Norfolk, and Henry of Bolingbroke, now Duke of Hereford, as the 2 final men who had defied him in 1387, who were still at liberty. Through the king's clever machinations, the 2 men were brought into a position where they had no choice but to stand before each other, ready to fight to the death in a trial by combat. But the king decided in the end that even this was too dangerous, and he banished both of them from the kingdom instead, thereby setting in motion the events that would lead inexorably to his own downfall. Mowbray had been imprisoned prior to his trial, and in exile he made pilgrimage to the Holy Land. Returning from thence, he died of plague in Venice on the 22nd of September 1399. Behind the shield on the central boss we see his 2 hands reaching out for the holy city of Jerusalem, while below the shield his lion crest, granted by Richard II, has been turned into something richly symbolic, the lion becoming imprisoned by the crown which it previously wore. The standing lion has become couched and pathetic. The 4 shields which lie closest to the central boss are all for Thomas Mowbray. These are the 3 Lions of England, differenced with a label, for his great-grandfather, Thomas Plantagenet of Brotherton, Earl of Norfolk, the same quartering the Mowbray lion, the Duke's White Lion rampant impaling the FitzAlan arms of his wife, who made the donation to place these shields here, and another rampant lion argent, this time on a black background, for Mowbray's mother, the heiress of Lord Seagrave. Peripheral to this group are Mowbray quartering Seagrave at 15 and Mowbray impaling Seagrave at 38. An event of equal magnitude and horror for the Mowbray family occurred only 7 years following the exile of the Duke of Norfolk, when his son, Archbishop Arundel's great-nephew Thomas Mowbray, the Earl Marshal, was summarily executed by Henry IV in 1405 for his participation in the rebellion of Richard Scrope, Archbishop of York. We have at 9 his arms impaling those of his wife Constance Holland, the daughter of John Holland, Earl of Huntingdon, who had himself been executed for conspiring to murder Henry IV and his sons in 1400. The final Mowbray shield in Bay 30 is Mowbray impaling Neville at 34 for John Mowbray, the next Earl Marshal and second son of the Duke of Norfolk, admitted to the Cathedral Confraternity on the 19th of June 1413. His arms impale the saltire arms of his wife Catherine Neville, whom he married in 1412. His father-in-law, the Earl of Westmoreland, restored to his family the office of Marshal of England as a wedding gift, it having become separated from the hereditary title of Earl Marshal. Having just mentioned John Holland, Earl of Huntingdon, it's time to relate that his arms are here at number 5, and that he is our second individual to have accused the Earl of Arundel of treason. Here his arms impale those of England for his wife Elizabeth of Lancaster. Her arms should be those of her father John of Gaunt, but these arms are to be found nowhere in the cloister, and I have suggested that this is because not only had he pronounced the death sentence on the Earl of Arundel, but he did it in such a harsh way that the Archbishop found it impossible to forgive him. John Holland's arms have been placed immediately adjacent to those of the Earls of Arundel and Warwick, the victims of 1397, which are placed together on the wall side of the vault. A third shield in this group, at number 1, that of the Earldom of Stafford, underscores the message. John Holland murdered Ralph Stafford, the eldest son of the Earl of Stafford, in a brawl. The placement together of the arms gives out a signal that the families concerned, with the encouragement of the Archbishop, now wished to be reconciled. John Holland's son was admitted by the Archbishop to the Cathedral Confraternity with John Mowbray on the 19th of June 1413, after the two men had attended a requiem mass there for Henry IV. The third accuser of the Earls of Arundel and Warwick present is Thomas Despenser, erstwhile Earl of Gloucester, who was executed at Bristol in 1400 for his involvement in the plot to murder Henry IV. His arms at 39 impale those of the Plantagenet House of York for his wife Constance Plantagenet, the daughter of Edmund, Duke of York, by his wife Isabel, the illegitimate daughter of Pedro the Cruel, King of Castile and Leon. Constance herself committed an act of treason in 1405, but was pardoned. The arms of their son Richard Despenser are at 16, impaling Neville. The Archbishop was given the right to choose a husband for Richard on the 23rd of May 1412 and chose for him the Earl of Westmoreland's daughter, Eleanor Neville. Richard's unimpaled arms are at number 29. The fourth accuser was John Montague, 3rd Earl of Salisbury, who was attainted and executed in 1400. A strong argument can be made that the undifferenced arms of Montague at number 33 in this bay are for him. The arms of his son Thomas Montague, who was restored in 1409 as the 4th Earl and had been received into the cathedral confraternity on the 31st of March 1413, occur elsewhere in the cloister, impaling the arms of his wife Eleanor Holland. The fifth accuser was Edward Plantagenet, then Earl of Rutland and later Duke of York. He is at number 8, his arms impaling those of his wife Philippa Mohun or Moon. Here are the shields of the 5 accusers placed together. Top left is Thomas Mowbray, Duke of Norfolk, impaling Fitzalan. In the centre, Thomas Despenser, Earl of Gloucester, impaling York. Top right is Edward, Duke of York, impaling Moon. Bottom left is John Holland, Earl of Huntingdon, impaling England. And bottom right, the 3 fusils of the Montague Earls of Salisbury. This introduces a substantial Moon family grouping in the bay. An impalement of Moon with Burghersh at 37 is for Philippa's mother, Joan Lady Moon of Dunster. Joan was a substantial cathedral benefactress who was buried in the cathedral in 1404. We have her father's arms of Burghersh at 35. There are impalements for all 3 of her daughters, one of whom predeceased her mother. This was Maud Moon, married to Lord Strange of Knockin at 6, with the undifferenced arms of her son Richard Lord Strange of Knockin at 27. Her daughter Elizabeth Moon at 12, impaling Montague, was the widow of William Montague, 2nd Earl of Salisbury. She was not the mother of the executed Earl, who was her nephew. Also part of this grouping at 13 is Despenser impaling Burghersh for Lady Moon's deceased niece Elizabeth Burghersh, married to Edward Despenser, linking the Moon grouping to the Despenser family grouping, also in this bay. As the marriages of 3 children of Ralph Neville, 1st Earl of Westmoreland, have been placed in this bay, 2 of them because they were daughters marrying into the houses of Mowbray and Despenser, his personal arms, gules, a saltire argent, have been included here at 24, while his arms impaling those of his second wife, Joan Beaufort, are at 18. The Earl was clearly a cathedral donor, but made no attempt to personally sponsor the arms of his very many married children. It is worth noting that the arms of the earldom of Arundel occur twice in this bay. Whenever the same arms occur twice in a cloister bay, there is always a reason for it, and here the reason is that both the Archbishop's brother and his nephew, the next Earl, were intended. There remain a few unconnected shields which are simply gap fillers in this bay. At 17, the arms of the extinct family of Bertram of Northumberland are a leftover shield from an Ogle family grouping in Bay 34. The intervening bays 31 to 33 having their own particular themes. At 4 are the 3 bends of John Byron of Lancashire, the head of his family, who was a king's esquire of Henry IV and therefore known to Archbishop Arundel. At 10 are the attributed, that is, posthumously invented, arms of Stephen Langton, one of 3 archbishops of Canterbury who had been made cardinal prior to this time. Archbishop Arundel placed the arms of all of them in the cloister. Langtons are loosely based on the per pale arms later used by the Italian family of Scotti, from whence came Pope Innocent III, who made Langton a cardinal. Finally, 2 shields together at 25 and 31 are the arms of the King's Knight Sir John Pelham of Sussex and his first wife Margaret Grey of Fulbourn in Cambridgeshire. His arms also occur impaled with those of his third wife Joan Bramshot in Bay 32, so the arms here are apparently overspill from that bay. Pelham's second wife, another Joan, apparently died while she was holding Pevensey Castle for the House of Lancaster against forces loyal to Richard II in 1399. It's possible that no arms were included for her because she was not omnigerous. You will find a great deal more information in the pages of my book, Great Cloister, A Lost Canterbury Tale, published by Archaeopress in 2020. It's more than just a book about the cloister, as it goes into considerable detail about each unique shield, tracing its origins. You will find here many of the great families of England up to the reign of Henry IV, and also the European kingdoms. It comprises over 700 pages, including 771 illustrations, 37 pedigrees and a detailed index. You are seeing here just a small selection of the pages. Shortly you will see on the screen details of how to find it. If you would like me to undertake research on your own family, I can be contacted via my personal website, drpaulfoxfsa.com. And finally, do please subscribe to my History and Heraldry channel on YouTube, which of course costs you nothing, so that you can follow additions to my list of talks.